Hi, congratulations. If you are watching this video, it means that you have made it this far in the Washington Media Scholarship Program. And so I would say I'm happy to see you guys, but obviously this is pre-recorded. So my name is Jessica Carter. I work at On Message Inc., who is a sister company to National Media in Purple, you guys will become familiar with in the coming weeks. I am the social media director there. Um, I work on campaigns to get people elected to Congress, Senate, mayor, all those kind of things. I run their social media campaigns. I have been working in this world since I was in college. I would say I graduated college, but just like you guys, I was doing internships while I was in college as well. And when I was graduating, social media was just coming up. Um, Social media had started out, it was back when Facebook was only for college kids. You had to have a .edu address to join, and there were no parents on Facebook. There was no Instagram. I started an internship with NASCAR, actually. Yes, that's right, the race cars. And Twitter had just started. And I was the youngest person working at an office. I was an intern, and Twitter came out and they said, here you go, young person, you handle the Twitter account. And so that started me in the social media field. It's not something you majored on, you couldn't take classes in it. And slowly, I just started taking it on for every internship I did, every job I got after that. And now social media is not only my job, but I hire people to do it. I hire people to go out on these campaigns and do social media for these campaigns as well. So I'm here to give you guys kind of a virtual etiquette class. And we're going to cover a couple different topics today. The topics I'm going to cover is going to be online reputation. So the number one person whose online reputation you want to protect, of course, is yours. I do this for my clients, but I'm going to teach you guys how to make sure that you're doing this for you on the reg, so you can make sure that you are squeaky clean when it comes to looking for internships, applying for scholarships like this one, and then eventually looking for jobs. And then I'm going to go through a couple tips with you guys on Zoom tips. So just like this, when you're doing video conferencing calls, things like that, I think in light of the post-COVID world, we're going to be doing a lot more of this. Our team has stumbled with it a little bit since we've been all working remotely. So I think it's a good time to take some reminders on some tips and tricks there. And then as you guys enter the professional workforce, I think it's also a good idea to check in on some email etiquette there as well. I always could use a reminder. So when I was going through and making all my notes for this, it was a good refresher for me too. So I want to start off with you guys talking about online reputation management. So I want you to start thinking about your online presence more than just, oh no, I need to make sure that my Instagram's private and nobody sees that one picture from that one night. I want you to start thinking about it much more broadly. So in order to do that, I want you guys to Google yourself. I don't know if you've done this. Maybe I'm weird. Maybe I'm the only person that does this pretty often, but I want you to do this, and I want you to use a private browser. I want you to do an incognito search. Sometimes when you're searching from the browser that you use on a day-to-day basis, it will pull up things based on your past searches. So I want to make sure that you open a private browser and you do that, just to give you a very unbiased approach. And then really take inventory of what comes up. Is it your Facebook page, your Instagram? Is it an article that maybe you had published through school? Things like that. And really take inventory of like what it is. If nobody knew me, what from this Google search would they be able to see from me? Click on Google Images, which images are pulling through. It's really interesting to see what's there, and probably what's there that you thought might have been private, but maybe it wasn't. And a good time to kind of jot down some notes of like, hey, I need to go back in there and I need to redo some of these settings because it's pulling through on the Google search. Is your LinkedIn account coming up? If it's not, that is something that you want to come up. So in addition to marking the items that maybe you don't want to come up in a Google search, maybe you want to take note of some of the items that you do want to come up in a Google search. And we're going to talk a little bit about that when we get to LinkedIn, about how to make sure your LinkedIn account is coming up in a Google search. The other part about this is set a Google alert for yourself. I know this might seem a little like, I don't know, Kardashian-esque, but if something pops up, or if, for instance, the Washington Media Scholars, if there's an article that comes out about you being a part of Washington Media Scholars and your name is mentioned in it, you'll get an email alert about that article. And then that article is something that you can then share on your LinkedIn profile, on your Twitter account, anything like that. So you're just amplifying telling your story. And all of this is going to make up your online reputation. So we mentioned social media settings a little bit there. So I want to make sure that everything is pretty tight when it comes to this. I know that Facebook changes their settings all the time. So for instance, I just updated our settings for our clients 6 months ago, and Facebook has changed them since then. So even if you think, yeah, I've done that, I'm not new to this, Jessica, like you're talking to a wall right now, go back in, because I guarantee that they have changed since you've looked at it last. For instance, you want people to be able to see you a little bit. And so your profile photo and your cover image are going to be open no matter what, no matter how tight your settings are. Unless you disable your account, people will be able to see your profile photo and your cover image. Didn't used to be like this on Facebook. You used to be able to go like incognito. It's not like that anymore. As long as you have a profile, your profile photo and your cover image are public. So go ahead and check those. Make sure you don't have like some outdated cover image that's promoting like a Christmas charity event from last year or something. Just make sure everything's pretty updated and clean. And then you want to make sure you limit your past post. So for some people, I know this is hard because you're like, oh, I've been posting on here for however many years. It's really hard for me to go back through and edit all of that. Just make sure you go back through and you limit your past posts. That way you can save some of the energy. For Twitter, in this world that we're in now, in the industry that you're in now, and I'm assuming if you're a part of the scholarship program, that this is the political world, the media world, that kind of thing. This is the industry you want to be in. If it were anybody else, I would say for Twitter, you want to protect your tweets. But for this world, Twitter is media. Twitter is politics. Twitter is breaking news. And so I think that you need a presence there. I would say if your current account is not focusing on those industry news updates, current events, things that have to do with this industry, I would say you might want to consider starting a new one, maybe like a professional account, and maybe keeping that other account as like a personal Twitter account. So give that a little bit of thought there, but you should definitely have an account that's talking about the industry that you want to be in. So for instance, NASCAR, when I was in NASCAR, I had a NASCAR account and it had everything about racing, sponsorship updates, etc. I followed journalists that also followed the sport. So you want to make sure that you're trying to be as relevant as possible. And then of course you might have some other interests within that as well, but I really tried to keep it as somebody that was in a PR communications field, something that was a little bit more professional than, let's say, my Instagram account. Moving on to LinkedIn. So you want to make sure that this is fully updated. So you know how LinkedIn gives you that little bar across and it's like, oh, your profile is 25% complete, 50% complete. Everybody's profile on here should be 100% complete. That includes making sure that you have that cover image on the back. And I know it's annoying. You're like, I already have a profile photo. What do I put in a cover image? It can be anything. If you guys are in college, it can be a background image of your college campus. It can be a background image of your hometown. It can be a photo from something you worked on. You just want to make sure that you have something there. Keep in mind that if I'm a recruiter, if I'm somebody that's hiring interns, I'm going to search on LinkedIn and I get 10 people. So of these 10 people, who am I going to click on? People with complete profiles. And that does sometimes include people with cover images. That also goes for links. Like as you guys are doing putting your resumes into LinkedIn, that is one of the things that a paper resume cannot do. So on a paper resume, I can say, oh, I worked on this and it got placed in the Washington Post, but I can't click on the link from the paper resume. I can put the link in my LinkedIn account. So you want to make sure that you're linking to outside sources where you have them. Even if it's hey, I worked on such and such program, don't assume that person knows what that program is. Link to more information, like make it interactive. This is all going to help when you get to your search engine optimization. So that SEO that you get from your LinkedIn account is going to help you come up in that Google search that we just talked about, particularly when you look at the keywords that are in your skills. So I think on the skill set, it gives you like 50 words. It's not a whole lot, but you want to be using really good keywords there. So if you're PR, it's public relations, communications, that kind of thing. Like you want to make sure that you're using really good keywords there. Don't use that space for like filler words. Make sure that each word is like really, really strong, even if you have to bullet them out there. And then the same thing with your headline. Your headline needs to be something strong. So for instance, I think that my LinkedIn headline right now is social media director at On Message Inc. If you don't have a current position, you can always say Washington Media Scholar recipient, or if you're looking for a position, you can always say seeking work in XX field. That's totally appropriate. And then for your image, you want to make sure that you have something that's professional looking. Make sure it actually looks like you. Do your hope that eventually you're going to meet this person that you're connecting with virtually in person when you get a job or you intern for them. So you don't want them to think that you like catfish them. So take a good photo. Nowadays you can do that in portrait mode. Just have a friend take a photo of you against like a blank wall, something like that. And just make sure there's not other people in there with you. I don't want to have to guess like who you are. Just try to make it as professional as possible. Okay. The other thing I will say about this is that when you're on LinkedIn, you want to make sure that you're trying to connect to as many people as possible. So honestly, I'm expecting to get a LinkedIn invitation from every single one of you. If I don't get a LinkedIn invitation from every person that gets this, I'm going to be really upset because that means you definitely didn't listen to this. Every person that you interact with during the scholarship program, you should be looking up on LinkedIn and connecting with them. This goes for any scholarship program that you have, anytime you do a job shadow with anybody. Like make sure not only that you're following up and you're thanking these people, but that you're following up and you're making them a LinkedIn contact. That's only going to help. I can't tell you how many jobs I've gotten because I've gone on and I've said, oh, you know what? I have a panel interview tomorrow. Let me look up the panelists on LinkedIn, and it'll say, oh, you have a shared contact. So when I get to the interview, I can say, oh, you know Chris? I know Chris. And then we're able to play the like name game. So make sure that you're sending me a LinkedIn invite and everybody else that you run into. The other thing I'll say on here is, and I'm sure you guys know this, but your career center at school is a huge help when it comes to a lot of this stuff. Nowadays, career centers have like a nice photographer there. They can take a professional headshot of you. They can help you fill out this LinkedIn page. Sometimes they'll even set you up with a URL so you can have your own website, so you have an interactive resume. If you're not using your career center, you're doing it wrong. Like you paid for that in your tuition, so please use it. Okay, so the last thing I'll talk about under online reputation management is, well, what can I post about? Sometimes people are, kind of drawing a blank when they're like, oh, well, I definitely know what I don't want to post about. So this is the one thing I will say. Everybody knows the obvious of like what you shouldn't post about. These are the three things that are my pet peeves. That if I look you up and you posted about this and I want to hire you, makes me very weary. One, do not complain or rant on social media. I know this is really hard. Like if Delta lost your bags, I'm very sorry, but like I probably don't want to hear you ranting about Delta or about how Dunkin' Donuts messed up your order on social media. But I definitely don't want to hear you ranting about your current job or a past job. So it's a big one. Like, oh my God, I'm so bored at work, or I can't believe my boss wants me to do this. You would be surprised how many people think that we probably can't see that. And then I'll Google somebody and I'll be like, I can't believe they posted that on their social. The other one is vulgar language. I think that goes without saying. The last one is relationship issues. I'm really sorry if you have relationship issues, but I don't need to like read through Coldplay lyrics and read between the lines about what happened with your breakup. That should be on like a personal account that's like only friends have access to that. So if I can find that, that probably means you're going to bring that same drama into the office, which means I'm probably going to hire somebody else. So what should you post about on stuff that is accessible to the public? So number one is business updates or industry news. Like I would say right now, everything that's going on in the political world, you can post about bills that are getting processed. For me, for social media is more important than ever during these COVID times. So for me, it's been taking a campaign that used to happen in person with handshakes and kissing babies, and we're moving it all online. So there's lots of new features that are available through Facebook, whether it's like Facebook Rooms, where they're kind of copying Zoom in that video conferencing type of ways, new Facebook Live features. So those would be things that I would be talking about on my Twitter account to participate in like industry conversation. Current events, that goes without saying. An easy one is this experience that you're in right now. So I know that it's a little bit different this year in a lot of the events that we're hosting with media scholars, but you should be posting about all of these. So as you're doing different projects with people, as you're working on your project, as you're doing job shadows, or you're doing one-on-ones with people, make sure you're sending out stuff like, hey, I had a really great session with Jessika. You don't have to use me, you can use somebody else. And then make sure that you're hashtagging it. The media scholars hashtag is WMSF. So just the initials for Washington Media Scholars Foundation. And then it'll really help us out too if you hashtag scholarships. It'll just help us be part of a different conversation. But that Washington Media Scholars hashtag, the WMSF, will really help us be able to repost your content. It'll help our partners be able to repost our content. So this is good stuff for you to put in that backlog of social content. So if you send me the LinkedIn invite, like you're supposed to send me, and I accept it, which I totally will, and I go to your page and you don't have anything posted about the media scholars, I'll be sending you a message and asking why. Okay, so that's kind of an overview of the online reputation stuff. We'll go over this at the end, but obviously you guys can ask me questions about anything. I'm always available. We can get on Zoom. We can do this one-on-one. But in terms of that part, I want to move over into Zoom tips, where we are now. So my number one Zoom tip is a dry run. This has happened to me. This has happened to every person as we have switched to working from home. Do a dry run. So log in. Zoom will always prompt you. Do you want to test your audio? Do you want to test your video? Click yes. Try it. Sometimes you get on and I don't realize that maybe this computer is hooked up to a Bluetooth speaker that I had elsewhere in the house. You don't want to start your thing and you're like, oh no, I can hear Mark from accounting over in the dining room or something. Test everything. If you have headphones, I recommend headphones personally. I think it helps other people hear you. I think it gets rid of a lot of the ambient noise. The one thing I'll say about that, if you have the new AirPods, there is actually an ambient noise setting that will make ambient noise louder to the people that are listening to you. Don't turn that on. If you're outside, it will make it sound like you're in a bird sanctuary. Found out that the hard way. So headphones when you can, and make sure you do this well in advance. Like, don't wait to do this 10 minutes before the video conference and realize something's wrong, and then you're trying to fix it. It doesn't go well. Try to do this at the beginning of the day. You know, chances are if you're going through this process with media scholars, excuse me, guys, that you're going to have a couple of these a day. So do it first thing in the morning, just get it over with. And then also be prepared that your headphones are going to die and you have to be flexible. Be prepared for all outcomes. The other thing I'll say about sound is you have to be on mute if you are not talking. Let me say this again, because there will be someone that does this. If you are not speaking, go on mute. You don't think you're producing any sound, but your air conditioner, your fan, your dog, whatever, is probably producing sound that is driving somebody else absolutely insane. So go on mute. That's just a good practice, and it's common courtesy to other people. Appearance, I think you want to limit distractions. Obviously, know your audience. Don't get on there with like a bunch of words on a t-shirt and then you're in mirror mode and then it's backwards and I'm like, what does that t-shirt say? Make sure you look semi-professional. I'm not saying that we expect everyone who's working from home to be like in a suit. Obviously, that would be a little strange. But just make sure that you look appropriate, you look professional, and then be aware of what's going on in the background. I think it's a safe bet to have a blank wall behind you. I think good light is important. I don't know about you guys, but if you've been watching the news lately, a lot of celebrities, a lot of politicians have been doing their media interviews from home, like on their laptops and stuff. And some of them, I swear, it looks like they're in hostage videos. You're like, where are these people? Did no one pay attention to the background they are? Like, are they in a bunker somewhere? So make sure you have good light. I'm not saying you have to have nothing behind you. You can have some art behind you. Just maybe limit, you don't want a window. You don't want somebody walking by your window or somebody driving by. Just try to limit distractions as much as possible. That goes for your appearance and your background. Oh, learn the art of a pause. I have a huge problem with this. So I'll get on Zoom calls and I'll start presenting like I am now, and I never take a breath, and therefore nobody else gets to participate. So when you're speaking, learn the art of a pause to let other people chime in. It's different than when you're in person because you can take visual cues from somebody else. So you want to make sure that you slow down and give other people a chance to chime in. Now, that being said, if you are trying to chime in and you don't really want to talk over other people, I'm sure people have noticed in Zoom, there's actually, I'm looking on here right now, a raise your hand feature. I've seen this used several times. It will give whoever's talking an alert that somebody's raised their hand, so then they know to go back to you. If you're like me, I lose my train of thought all the time. So I use this little chat feature at the bottom, and I'll just put my question or whatever I wanted to say in chat, or I'll just say, hey team, don't let me forget, I want to come back and talk about this when David's done presenting or whatever. So I think that's a really underused feature of Zoom in particular. The last thing I'll say about Zoom, punctuality. And this goes for in-person meetings as well. I was told this probably in high school. I was told this again during all my internships, and I would tell this to anybody I ever trained. To be early is to be on time. To be on time is to be late. That especially goes for Zoom calls, because whoever is running that Zoom call, like if you don't come on there, they're staring at a blank screen and they're ticking off the time in their head that they're staring at a blank screen and not at you, or they're just staring at themselves. So as a good rule of thumb, I always try to be on there a minute or so early. It lets me double check my stuff, do my dry run, make sure I can hear and you're just on there when they pop on. So it's great. I should have gotten water before I came in here. Okay, last part is email tips. So I had a very hard time when I entered the workforce getting used to Outlook. That's typically what most workplaces use, is an Outlook system. I had used Gmail, Hotmail, AOL, all that kind of stuff. But I don't think I realized, and I wasn't prepared for how much corporate life focused on the Outlook programs. So if you're not familiar with Outlook programs, I suggest that you become familiar. There are a lot of tips and tricks that are very particular to Outlook that are helpful for me. I think depending on what your line of business is, it's important that you come up with a filing system to keep all of your emails. This helps me work. I think there's lots of good practices and it depends on the person. So I don't want to say that my way is the right way, but finding a way that you start to use your inbox as a to-do list. And then once things are done, you start to file them away, but you make sure that you keep everything, I think is probably my number one tip. You know, we're going to get into some nitty gritty here, but my number one tip is to come up with a system that works for you. So you're not coming in on a Monday morning to 400 emails and don't know where to start. Is get your system down early and make it second nature. So the number one thing that I have listed down here is that you have to have a professional email address. I don't want an email from Bubblegum82 or Jeff Gordon fan 94, you know. It typically needs to be like first initial, last name, last name, some version of that. Also, and there might be some people that disagree with me here, it needs to be like an @Gmail. Hotmail's out, MSN's out, Yahoo, AOL, like, I mean, it can be from like an organization. If you have your thing set up to go to a customized address, that's fine. But if you're using a free email service, it typically needs to be Gmail. It's just way more relevant. If I get an email from somebody at AOL, I'm just like, do they have a landline and a rotary phone as well? And that's just my 2 cents. Somebody else might tell you different. I'm just going to go with my gut on that one. Okay. Subject lines. This is extremely important as somebody that gets a lot of emails, and you guys are going to report to people that get a lot of emails. You're going to get a lot of emails. Your subject lines need to be direct and they need to be clear. So for instance, if all of a sudden we're pushing back a meeting that's supposed to happen in 10 minutes, the subject line needs to say meeting time changed, like in all caps. Don't make them super long, but make sure that I know pretty much exactly what's in that email and if it needs my immediate attention. So if there's stuff where, I'm trying to think of an example. For instance, I have a client that's going to go on Fox News in 5 minutes. Somebody will put in the email signature, alert, and then such and such on Fox News in 5 minutes kind of deal. So think of it as like your SOS, like your lifeline, and then everything else you have to be very clear about. So for instance, I deal with a lot of clients, so don't just say Instagram login failure, say Instagram login failure dash and then the client that it is. So you can use kind of your own code, and a lot of it will depend on where you work at, but just make sure subject lines are direct and clear. Reply all. I like to reply all. That is kind of a good business practice that we have set up with my team. We use that to kind of check each other. Excuse me for 1 second. Okay. We use reply all with my team to double check each other to make sure nobody's forgotten anything. It's just a good set of checks and balances. However, if you start to go off on a tangent about something else and you know that 5 people in that email, it doesn't apply to them, take them off. Also, be cognizant when you're replying to people, because maybe you're getting ready to say something that so-and-so will be upset about. Just always be cognizant when you reply all. Signatures. You need email signatures. I think it's a huge pet peeve when people email me and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, you know what? I should call them and we should talk about this instead. And their phone number is not in their email signature. It's annoying. I don't want to go hunt for it. So it should be your name, your title, your email, even though it's in the thing, and your phone number. I don't need your address. I'm probably not sending you mail. Some people will link their Twitter account in their thing. They'll link their LinkedIn in the thing. Sometimes they'll have their company logo. I don't think that's as important. You basically need your name and your phone number. And then my other gripe about email signatures is make sure it's in the same font and the same size as the rest of your email. I don't know why people like to go crazy with their signature fonts. Just make it the same and make sure like your default font on your emails is normal. You know, I have gotten some emails from people where they'll write me back and it'll be like purple font and you wonder like, am I special? Did you just use this purple font for me or is this your default? So it should always be something plain, professional, black. Salutations. I always think it's nice to get a salutation from somebody, especially if it's somebody that I don't correspond with a lot. So hello, Jessica. Good morning, Jessica. You don't necessarily have to go into the hope this email receives you well. I think it's nice if you do, but don't start off with, I'm trying to think of a bad example. Not that any of you would ever start off an email with, yo, Jessica. Just try to include a hi or a hello. The other thing I will note here is don't shorten somebody's name unless they've told you to. So in my instance, I go by Jessica, and I wouldn't mind if somebody said, hello, Jess, or hi, Jess, but we didn't have that conversation beforehand that I said, hey, call me Jess. So if you're writing to a Michael, don't automatically assume that they go by Mike. Just try to call them by their full first name. Watch your humor. I have definitely been guilty of this. You think something's funny, you read it funny, but it might not be funny over email. It's the same kind of thing with text. It's hard to get humor across on email or text. And then proofread. Proofread, and proofread some more. It is always helpful to have another set of eyes as well. Have somebody look over something, especially if it's really important. But we've all been very guilty of like typing something really fast and wanting to be the first to respond, but slow down and make sure you proofread. My last tip is when you write an email, and somebody else told me this and I started doing it, your first thing you typically fill out is you put in the email address that it's going to. I'm here to tell you, don't do that. Put the subject line, start your email, fill out your email, do your salutations, write what it's about, have a good subject line, your signatures there, your call to actions, proofread it 1-2 times, then add the email that's in there. Because several times I've been in and I've been closing a bunch of tabs and it'll just send an email, or it'll send an email before you're done and then you send an incomplete email. And then you have to send a follow-up email. It's like, hey, sorry, I sent that too long before I finished it. So if you add the email address it's going to last, that won't happen. So that's my email tips, my Zoom tips, and my online reputation management stuff. I know that I kind of flew through that, but I think that's a good general overview for everybody. I do think that the online reputation management stuff works better when I'm working one-on-one with somebody, particularly when I know where you're at in your point of your career and maybe how far along you are in setting up your online reputation management system. So if you have questions, you guys can reach out. Andrea will send you all of my contact information. And remember, if I do not get a LinkedIn invite from you, you're doing it wrong.